Good afternoon, everyone. The public meeting held under Section 34 of the Planning Act is declared open. The purpose of the public meeting is to consider an application submitted by Corinne Lawyer and Louis Oliver to amend the Township's Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw, Bylaw 22, 2003. The Planning Act requires that notice of the public meeting be given at least 20 days before the public meeting is held. Would the planner confirm the date the notice was given?
Yes. On May 21st, notice was mailed and posted on the subject lands.
Notice of this public meeting having been given in accordance with the Planning Act, and I now declare the meeting properly constituted to transact its business. Any person wishing to receive notice of the decision regarding the application being considered must send an email request to the Township office immediately following this meeting. Anyone who previously sent an email concerning the application will receive a digital notice of decision without further action. As required by Section 34(14)(5) of the Planning Act, Council is required to inform the public of who is entitled to appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal under Section 34(11) and 19. Under Section 34(11), if Council decides to refuse an application or refuses or neglects to make a decision on an application within 90 days of the municipal clerk receiving the application, the applicant or the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing may appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal by filing an appeal with the clerk of the municipality. Under Section 34(19), not later than 20 days after the giving of notice of passing of the bylaw, the applicant, any person or public body who made oral submissions at the public meeting or made a written submission to Council before the bylaw was passed, or the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing may appeal to the local appeal tribunal by filing an appeal with the clerk of the municipality. Would the planner please describe the purpose and effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment?
Thank you. Ms. Lawyer and Mr. Oliver are the recent purchasers of a large property off of Berry Lake Trail to the south of Berry Lake. They are looking to construct a dwelling on this property. Currently, the land is in a rural zone, but access is through a series of connections from a township road across Crown land and ultimately to a right-of-way that's being reserved in a lease agreement, I understand. So from a township staff perspective, we had concerns with building on this property, given the access and the current rural zoning. So the proposed zoning amendment is to place the property in what's called a limited service residential zoning. This is an indication that the access is by other means than a publicly maintained road. And the purpose of the zoning is then to facilitate or allow the applicants to obtain a building permit.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of the amendment? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to the amendment? Are there any questions from members of council? Are there any written comments that were received?
Only Ontario Power Generation, and they were okay with the proposal.
This therefore completes the public meeting process. Council will give careful consideration to the application for zoning bylaw amendment. If there are no further comments or questions, I declare this public meeting closed.
Thank you.
The public meeting held under Section 34 of the Planning Act is declared open. The purpose of the public meeting is to consider an application submitted by Earl Thompson to amend the Township Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw, Bylaw 22-2003. The Planning Act requires the notice of the public meeting being given at least 20 days before the public meeting is held. Would the planner confirm the date the notice was given?
Thank you. Yeah, similar to the last one, on May 21st, notice was mailed out and posted on site.
Notice of this public meeting having been given in accordance with the Planning Act, I now declare the meeting properly constituted to transact its business. Any person wishing to receive notice of decision regarding the application being considered must send an email request to the township office immediately following this meeting. Anyone who previously sent an email concerning the application will receive a digital notice of decision without further action. As required under Section 34(14)(5) of the Planning Act, Council is required to inform the public of who is entitled to appeal to the local Planning Appeal Tribunal under Section 34(11) and 19. Under Section 34(11), if Council decides to refuse an application or refuses or neglects to make a decision on an application within 90 days of the municipal clerk receiving the application, the applicant or the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing may appeal to the local Planning Appeal Tribunal by filing an appeal with the clerk of the municipality. Under Section 34(19), not later than 20 days after the giving of notice of passing of the bylaw, the applicant, any person or public body who made oral submissions at the public meeting or made a written submission to Council before the bylaw was passed, or the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing may appeal to the local Planning Appeal Tribunal by filing an appeal with the clerk of the municipality. Would the planner please describe the purpose and effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment?
Thank you. This amendment, first and foremost, it's a condition to the granting of a severance. It's a rezoning of a 1 hectare building lot applied for by Mr. Earl Thompson. Through a severance application, the County of Renfrew through their Land Division Committee, has agreed to approve this law based on certain conditions, and one of the conditions is a rezoning. The reason that this lot is going through a rezoning is because similar to the last one, access is the issue. Typically, lots are required to have frontage and direct access to public roads. In this case, the lot fronts on Centennial Lake Road, but access will be through a private right-of-way, which doesn't nicely conform to our bylaw. So the condition for granting the severance is that the property is rezoned to a limited or in this case, a rural exception zone to identify the different status of the access to the property.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of the amendment? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to the amendment? Are there any questions from members of council? Are there any written comments that were received?
Ontario Power Generation just indicating they have no concerns.
This therefore completes the public meeting process. Council will give careful consideration to the application for the zoning bylaw amendment. If there are no further comments or questions, I declare this public meeting closed. Good afternoon. The public meeting held under Section 34 of the Planning Act is declared open. The purpose of the public meeting is to consider an application submitted by John Windle to amend the township's comprehensive zoning bylaw, bylaw 22/2003. This is the second public meeting for this application. The Planning Act requires that notice of the public meeting be given at least 20 days before the public meeting is held. Would the planner confirm the date the notice was given?
Thank you. It was posted on site and mailed out on May 21st. And if I may just take this opportunity to add to your point, this is the second meeting. Normally a zoning amendment is mailed to properties within 120 meters. But as a result of our first public meeting, the second notice was given to a much wider mail out and included the village of Mount St. Patrick and some of the properties and all of the properties in between the top of Kennelly Mountain and Mount St. Patrick as well. So much wider mail out this time around.
Thank you. Notice of this meeting having been given in accordance with the Planning Act, I now declare the meeting properly constituted to transact its business. Any person wishing to receive notice of the decision regarding the application being considered must send an email request to the township office immediately following this meeting. Anyone who previously sent an email concerning the application will receive a digital notice without further action. As required under Section 34-14-5 of the Planning Act, Council is required to inform the public who is entitled to appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal under Section 34-11 and 19. Under Section 34-11, if Council decides to refuse an application or refuses or neglects to make a decision on an application within 90 days of the municipal clerk receiving the application, the applicant or the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing may appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal by filing an appeal with the clerk of the municipality. Under Section 34-19, not later than 20 days after the giving of notice of passing of the bylaw, the applicant, any person or public body who made oral submissions at the public meeting or made a written submission to Council before the bylaw was passed, or the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing may appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal by filing an appeal with the clerk of the municipality. Would the planner please describe the purpose and effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment?
Thank you. The purpose of this amendment is to allow the applicant to erect on his property a 25-meter fire tower, which would otherwise not be a permitted use for the property.
Does anyone wish to speak in favor of the amendment? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to the amendment? Are there any questions from members of council? Are there any written comments that were received?
Thank you. Yes. So I have a series of comments received regarding this proposal. This application, unlike the other two, I'm not proposing to bring it to council later today for a decision. So at a subsequent meeting, likely in July council meeting, I'll summarize the public comments that have been received, but there has been several.
Thank you. This therefore completes the public meeting process. Council will give careful consideration to the application for the zoning bylaw amendments. If there are no further questions or comments, I declare this public meeting closed. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the council meeting, regular council meeting, June 21st, 2021. Be it resolved, moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Frost. Be it resolved that the Township of Greater Madawaska Council calls to order the June 21st, 2021 regular meeting at 3 p.m. All in favor? Carried. And moved by is Councillor McPherson on?
Not yet.
Oh, can I be moved?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna have to redo that. Moved by Councillor Rigglehoff and seconded by Councillor Frost. Be it resolved that the Township of Greater Madawaska Council calls to order the June 21st, 2021 regular council meeting at 3:01 p.m. All in favor? And carried. Moved by Councillor Rigglehoff. Seconded by Councillor Frost. Be it resolved that the agenda of the council meeting of June 21st be approved as presented. All in favor? All in favor? Lucy, are you in favor?
Yes, I waved to you twice and you ignored me, sir.
Your screen was frozen.
Oh, okay, I'm good now.
Okay, yep. Carried. Moved by Councillor Rigglehoff, second by Councillor Frost, that the, okay, I'm sorry. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. And we'll move to our delegations. We have Sally McIntyre here from the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority. And we'll turn it over to Sally.
Great, thank you. I'll just adjust my screen here a little bit. Okay, and I'll call up my PowerPoint. So I'll share my screen. It says host disabled participant screen sharing. Are we able to adjust that? Very good, thank you. Okay, can somebody wave and let me know if that's visible to everyone? Thumbs up. Yes, thank you. Wonderful. Okay, great. So thank you for allowing me to come to today's meeting. I'm the general manager of Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority. And what I want to talk to you primarily about today is the watershed plan that we've been working on. So this is a map of the jurisdiction of the Conservation Authority, and you'll see that it's just a small segment of Greater Madawaska, sort of centered at the top of the watershed, but the lower end of Greater Madawaska falls within the watershed. And that portion of the township flows into the Clyde River system, which feeds into the Mississippi. So the Conservation Authority has jurisdiction over basically 3 water systems, the Mississippi River, as well as the Carp River Valley, which is entirely located within the city of Ottawa, as well as portions that drain directly into the Ottawa River. And so the Mississippi River Valley, which is the subject of this watershed plan, is roughly 3,700 square kilometers. And we have been working on this over several months now to get a sense for where we want to go with this system. So one of the things that I like to illustrate to people is the profile view of the Mississippi River. It drops about 250 meters over 200 kilometers. So it starts up near Bon Echo, Lake Massillon. And the 250 meter drop is significant. If you think about Niagara Falls, it's roughly 51 meter drop. So we're basically dealing with a drop 5 times the height of Niagara Falls. And we have most of our reservoir capacity is in the upper watershed. There's a very limited reservoir capacity on the Clyde River. So our objectives for the watershed plan were to document and provide for a broad understanding of the condition of the watershed and some of the broad issues that we're needing to grapple with, and use that as a basis to develop some shared goals and objectives and develop some actions that we can work on individually or collectively. And lastly, serve as a tool that we can use to sort of benchmark where we're at, where we want to go, and whether or not we're getting there. And for ourselves at MVCA to prioritize and budget the actions in partnership with our municipal partners. So we've been at this since 2019. It started with a detailed documentation of everything we knew about the watershed, and those backgrounder documents were shared with all the municipalities and asked for comment. And it was the foundation of those documents are what informed then the development of the goals and objectives. And you can see there the 8 key goals or themes around which goals were drafted and approved by our board last year. And then from those, once we understood what our goals and objectives are, we started coming up with any number of actions. And we started with a long list of almost 100, and we pared it down to 33. And we did that through these various discussion papers that we focused in on specific topics, because most people come to these kind of plans with a certain lens and interest. So we targeted one to the agricultural sector, another one to forestry, and you can see the list there. As well, we held webinars and forums to help engage people across the watershed to discuss these issues. Throughout the process, we had a public advisory committee, which we established in September of 2019. And it was a very instructive group of people representing a cross-section of the economy and different areas of the watershed. And they worked with us hand in glove throughout the process, reviewing many of these documents, acting as a sounding board. And so we feel that the process that got us to where we are today was very robust and provided ample opportunity, despite COVID, for people to learn and engage with us on this project. So the key priority areas that we're working forward towards are these. First theme is collaboration. And that's in essence one of the key reasons why conservation authorities were created in the first place, is because watersheds are interjurisdictional. The water might flow from here, but it then travels and then it goes downstream. So in our watershed, we have 11 municipalities, and the conservation authority is the vehicle through which those 11 municipalities can discuss and collaborate around water management issues. And this is a very timely issue because of the impacts we're seeing with climate change. And as I know you're experiencing, not just on the trips to the Clyde River, but also on the Madawaska River, we're seeing significantly reduced flows and levels from normal. I had called up on my screen here, I closed it, but I can give you later, I'll dig it out, some stats regarding the Madawaska River that demonstrate it's well below normal for this time of year, and in fact, reaching almost record levels. So not only does the watershed represent multiple municipalities, but water management is interjurisdictional in that it's at every level of government, federal, provincial, municipal. And a lot of the role that municipalities have is related around your own infrastructure, roads, if you have any water, collective well systems or wastewater systems, but also the whole approval process that municipalities play in terms of land use planning and new development and intensification around lakes, et cetera, management of septic systems, this sort of thing. So, water needs a lot of people to be talking and collaborating to be managed well. The second thing is the need for robust infrastructure. Ourselves at MVCA, we own and operate 11 water control structures. Many of them date back almost 100 years and are in significant need of upgrade. Similarly, a lot of municipal infrastructure and other government and agency infrastructure across the watershed is in need of upgrade. And so it's not only a matter of life cycle asset management that we are looking at this, but also in the context of climate change. And that brings me to the topic of resiliency, in that if we're going to be investing significant sums to repair this infrastructure, we need to have our eye on the future and what the future demands are going to be on that infrastructure, not just in terms of whether or not maybe we could be operating it differently, but do we need additional, or do we want to increase the capacity of existing? And so this is something actually that we will be looking at with yourselves and other municipalities. Is over time, over the next period of years, we're going to be looking at optimizing reservoir capacity within the watershed, because you may or may not be aware that Carleton Place takes its water directly from the river. It has a surface water intake, and therefore it's directly tied to the volumes and flows in the river. And under conditions such as we're in today, if this event, which we expect to ameliorate, just so you know, but if it were to be a prolonged event, could threaten the water supply for the town of Carleton Place. So this is not an insignificant issue, and we'll need to be having conversations around this. So the last issue then, of course, is to provide for sustainable water use and availability, and that's where these discussions are critical. So the 33 actions that are in the watershed plan are grouped by theme or goal. We identify partners, and you will see municipalities show up at various locations in the plan. It doesn't mean that you have to be a partner. It means that it's desirable that you are a partner with us on this. It doesn't mean that all municipalities have to participate. It means that, maybe the issue is more relevant to them than to others. As well, the plan identifies various implementation considerations, such as cost and some of the options. So I'm just going to walk you through one example from the plan. So the theme was integrated management and collaboration, and the goal was to collaborate with watershed partners in promoting an integrated and consistent approach to health and management of the watershed and water resources. The specific action being proposed was to extend the role of the Public Advisory Committee to implementation phase of the watershed plan. Now, you may or may not be aware that the province has been reviewing the regulations for conservation authorities over the past several months. And this is actually one of the things that the province has come back to CAs and said, you know what, we think you should have mandatory public advisory committees. So it was very nice to see this strong alignment between where the province is heading and where we were heading under this watershed plan. So we see this as being a very easy thing to implement. The province is regulating, we go in that direction. All we'll need to do is adjust the mandate and terms for our public advisory committee to meet whatever the province comes down with. So there are 32 other actions. I'm not going to get into all of them. I've highlighted a few of them here. So I'm just going to talk to you about a couple of these. So one of the issues I think we want to talk about is the water budget. And so as you may recall last year, and I want to thank you for this again, Greater Madawaska supported MVCA in its application to the federal government to conduct LIDAR mapping of the watershed. LIDAR mapping is where, an airplane goes over and it sends down a whole bunch of, literally tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of radar type detection, and allows us to get really good XYZ contour mapping of the watershed. And that, coupled with aerial photography, allows us to develop really robust modeling tools. We don't have a watershed model covering the entire watershed, and that's what that project was intended to do and will be doing. So based upon that, that will really help us to develop a water budget to engage in these kind of conversations about how is the water being used today? Are there seasonal needs that we need to be addressing? What is sort of what we're seeing in terms of historical trends on the watershed, what we're seeing today, and then what's projected over the future, and how robust is our infrastructure, and therefore what do we need to do to it to make it robust and sustainable going forward. To that end, then we also want to work with municipalities to make sure that all of our infrastructure is working and integrated well. So from the perspective of Greater Madawaska, the main thing would be roadside ditches and culverts, in that that's the feeder system to the natural systems. And so if you think of a culvert as a barrier, it acts like a dam, just like any of our dams. And when the capacity of that ditch is exceeded, that's when you get overtopping of roads and washouts and that sort of thing. So any work that Greater Madawaska is doing in the roads sphere is really important, that we're talking to each other to make sure that our model is up to date and that you've been given any information you need to make sure that you're designing your system as best as possible. I'll just continue on and see. So that's pretty much the second bullet there as well, a roadway flood vulnerability assessment. This is looking specifically at roads that under flood conditions tend to flood, and therefore there's concerns about emergency access and support to residents and businesses on those roads. This would pertain both to publicly owned roads, but also privately owned roads. And I'm not so sure the south end there, Greater Madawaska, how much that's a concern. There's a lot of private road associations around, for instance, Dalhousie Lake and Mississippi Lake, south, more south in the watershed. So I guess the last thing I would touch on here is the working with municipalities and public agencies to improve the application and coordination of our regulatory tools. And so that's where the whole planning review process, we're always here to help you if you receive planning applications in that section of the township. And of course, to the extent that we may be called upon to issue permits in that area, we want to collaborate and make sure our business processes are aligned so that we're not coming in too late in the process and putting up barriers unnecessarily and surprising people. I think we all like to operate in a sphere of no surprises so that people know upfront any impositions that we might put on a landowner or developer for their proposal. So with respect to the watershed plan, it's out for review right now. We're hoping to get comments back by the end of this week. If the township wants to take more time, if there's things in particular you want to look at, we can accommodate that, of course. It's going to our board for final approval in July. And so as long as we get comments, at least a week ahead of that, we should be able to accommodate any comments you might have. The last thing I wanted to touch on here is I mentioned that the province is developing and reviewing our regulations. One of the things that the draft consultation document has come out with is something they call a core watershed-based resource management strategy. It looks and feels a lot like the watershed plan that we've circulated to you. It has all the makings of a watershed plan. It's just they couldn't call it that because in other legislation, the watershed plan doesn't comprise everything they've envisioned by this strategy. So at a certain point, we're going to be taking the watershed plan and adjusting it as needed once these regulations come out and we know what additional information the province wants us to include in this strategy. So the good news is we've already done 90% of, if not more, of the heavy lifting to develop this strategy that's prescribed by the province, and we'll just have to tweak it to meet the regulatory requirements. So the next stage, once this is completed, will be for us to prioritize these actions and to integrate it into our budget cycle. So we typically develop our budget early fall for December circulation to municipalities and approval next February. So if you're interested at all in our regulations or what's being proposed by the province, that's the link there. So I think that's all from my end. I'll stop sharing and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you for that, Sally. So I'll open up to council for questions if there are any. Councillor Frost. You're muted there, John.
Sorry, it was just me fighting with my iPad. Were you able to hear that?
Yeah. Okay, you have a question there, John?
No, I was fighting with my iPad to get it back into the gallery mode.
Okay, any questions of council? Okay.
I have one actually, Mr. Mayor, sorry. I'll defer to Councillor Perry as she had her hand up as well too.
Oh, thank you, Chuck. I just have a quick question. You did allude to Carlton Place. Is there a problem there with their water supply?
Not today.
Okay.
We have done projections under climate conditions. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with Crotch Lake. Crotch Lake is our largest reservoir. And just so you have a sense of size, if you combine the capacity of all the reservoirs in the Mississippi watershed, I think they're less than a half or a third of what you have in the Madawaska. Okay, so these are not big reservoirs, right? Mm-hmm. So for us to maintain flow in the system during the dry season, during mid to late summer, we actually slowly release water from Crotch Lake, which is our largest reservoir. Mm-hmm. Now, most of the time, it's able to meet demand. But when you do your climate projections and based upon changing trends that we're seeing, and if this year, for instance, was continued, we weren't able to fill up Crotch Lake. We never did reach full capacity. And B, because of the conditions we're seeing, we've had to start to slow release already. So if you're already starting to maintain base flow in the river, having to release in mid-June, this is an issue. So if this was a prolonged event that lasted into August, yes, there's a risk there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
If I may,
Councillor Rigoloff.
Sally. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you're saying you're looking for support from our township in the way of roads and culverts. like how many, how much, how many kilometers? What do you have to, like, you looking for a couple 3 kilometers, or is there something larger in mind?
Oh, I didn't mean it in that sense. I just mean when you do your annual rehab and replacement or expansion program, just involve us. That's all I mean. So that we can integrate it into our model, so that if you're proposing any changes, A, we can advise you if it's problematic, and B, that we can integrate any changes into our model so that we have an accurate representation of what's on the ground. It's more a coordination. Let's make sure we're working collectively on this to not accidentally create a problem. So we had an issue in another county where a county road was proposing, the county was proposing to remove a culvert. And we went, do not remove that culvert, please, that's an important culvert. So it's things like that. It's just coordination.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Okay, Sally, if you don't mind, we have an item on our agenda to talk about representation on the board, and so I'm going to ask council permission to move that item up. It's 9061, and if Sally can stay with us, if there's any questions to council, perhaps you can assist us.
Yes, and actually, if at some point you want me to, I've been trying to call up the report that I had from OPG regarding Madawaska. If that's any interest, I can also share that with you.
Okay. So 9061, and I'll turn that over to the CAO.
So as council may recall, our representative is no longer, that sat on the board for a number of years, is no longer eligible to sit on the board for a few reasons. Therefore, our chair became vacant. We reached out and we were advised that ideally the position needs to be a member of council to meet the current legislative requirements. A report was brought to council in January, and attached that report for council's information. During that time, there was a number of questions that were raised. I did bring that to the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority, and then went on to the ministry. I've attached the questions that were asked along with the responses that were received. So essentially it looks like there's only 2 options before council. One is to appoint a member of council, or to submit a request to the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, requesting that a member of the public be appointed, who is not a municipal council. But while we may be able to submit that, the minister can always deny our request. So in the interest of having representation on Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority and not delaying this, the recommendation before council is that a member of council be appointed to this authority.
Okay, so I guess what we're reaching out to see if there's any member of council that would be willing to attend those meetings. I think there's 9 meetings a year. Am I correct in that, Sally?
Yes, and we also ask board members to sit on one of 2 committees. We have a policy and priority committee and a finance and administration committee. So they tend to meet 2 or 3 times a year as well.
Okay, so I guess the request is out there. Would any member of council volunteer to sit on this committee? Charles?
I see there's enough room to put my name in on the document there. Allison left it wide enough.
Okay. Well, thank you, Charles. And as you said on the environment and trails, it seems maybe to be a good fit. I was hoping, but thank you for stepping forward. And
so there's a motion, Ryan. You're in your document. No, resolutions. Go over to your right. To your right.
Oh.
Resolutions.
Oh yeah, I didn't find it.
Sorry, I should have found that right.
So moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Frost, that council appoints Charles Rigelhoff to the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Charles.
You're welcome, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so I think that's it. We'll return to our regular spot on the agenda and move to item 4061, a grant for Ginza Rink. And who's Leonard? Is Leonard here? No. No. Do you want to speak to it? Or
Renee, would you like to speak to this?
Yeah, I believe Leonard was simply providing an update to council on, I think at the last council meeting when I provided an update on grant applications, and the city were successful for the replacement of asphalt plywood boards, lighting and activity mats for the Ginza was requested for to provide a timeline for this. So Leonard's just providing an update that the intent is to have the project completed prior to the 2021-22 skating season, and that the funding agreement allows us to complete the project by December 31st, 2022. However, he does intend to have it completed this year.
okay. Thank you. Any questions of council on that? Okay. And no chairperson.
Mr. Mayor,
Oh, Councillor McPherson.
I just would like to apologize for joining the meeting late. Was encountering some difficulties with technology and couldn't get the connection to work. So my apologies for being late to the meeting.
Okay, thank you. 5061 Boundary Road Agreement with Admas and Bromley. Steve, are you going to speak to that one?
Yes. So we've finished the road agreement and we're asking council's approval. There was a few changes, more in just kind of like mileage and stuff like that. It was nothing big, but yeah, we're just asking for their approval of the road agreement.
So basically the sections of the roads, the operating and the capital stayed the same. It's just cleaning up some mileages. Is that correct?
Yeah, there was some that was like 0.2, it should have been 0.3, just small stuff
Okay.
like that. But
Okay, thank you. Moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Frost. The council rescinds bylaw 17-2020 Boundary Road Agreement with Admas and Bromley, and the council approves bylaw 26-2021 to enter into a boundary road agreement with the Township of Admas and Bromley. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. 5062 seasonally maintained roads. Oh, sorry, Councillor Perrier.
I'm sorry I didn't raise my hand. I was just curious to know, in the previous report, it states the agreement has the budgeted stuff, the financial requirements. Is that, Steve, is that sporadically all over the document? Are those the financials that you're talking about?
sorry, say that again, sorry.
Okay, in your report, you refer to the fact that the financial requirements are stipulated in the agreement and budgeted accordingly. If you go to the agreement.
Yeah, so.
Okay, go ahead.
So that's just for like a couple shared roads, like chunks of Pucker Street. So we would have to, in advance, talk with Admaston to budget properly to two parts of that road. That's
okay. Thank you.
Okay, so move to seasonally maintained roads. I'll read the resolution moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Frost. The council rescinds bylaw 33-2018, and furthermore, council approves bylaw 27/2021, closing and seasonal maintained on certain municipal highways, road allowances, and sidewalks. You want to speak to that, Steve?
Yeah, so the only difference is a little bit of the wording of the minimum maintenance standards. So the signage, and we added the sidewalks to it as well. So yeah, the lawyer just kind of cleaned it up a bit, the wording, and that's it.
Okay. So questions of council? All in favor? Carried. And 5063, speed limit suggestions. So.
Oh, I finished. Sorry, go ahead.
You know,
So I finished the speed limits. So I'm just bringing it back to council for them to review it. And if they have any changes to make, and we will bring it back in July's meeting for approval if there's any changes to be made.
okay, so we'll have time to ponder this further, but are there any questions of council now? And if not, you can bring them to the July meeting.
Could we have the comments in advance?
Oh, yeah.
So we could have them for the roads meeting that we can review, so that the speed limit bylaw could actually come for approval in July. So if we could have them by the end of the month, if that's not enough time, the following week, just so that we can bring this forward and we can proceed with posting the signs.
Okay. Thank you.
I believe Councillor Rigglehoff has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Rigglehoff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Allison. Yeah, I had to look over it. It looked good to me because we've discussed quite a few of the roads through emails from our constituents. So I like what I've seen there. That's a good job, Steve. In a related matter, is our digital sign back up? Is it working again or no?
No, Terry was in contact with the company. They want us to try a few things.
Okay.
They might just think it's a shorted out battery or something, but we got to try that out. So.
Okay, yeah, it's good to see that we all got that email from Laz through AMO that they're looking on getting a province-wide deal on those items from. They're looking at 6 submissions right now that will all benefit from their pricing. Yeah. And maybe better service.
Okay.
No disregard to your taking care of it, Steve.
Councillor McPherson.
Just a question. Is the intent to post every one of these roadways with speed limits? Otherwise, are we going to invest in, like, there's a ton of signage that would be required in order to post all of these roadways? Is that the intent? Is it to do some of it now and do it piecemeal as you go forward, or just the main roadways and not the others? What's the plan?
So we have ordered some signs. We have quite a few ordered, but we're going to start with the more busier roads and start signing them and see where we get with what we have, and just work at it. A road that goes into nowhere is not really on the top of the list right now, but maybe in the future we will have to.
Right, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so perhaps what we should do is see what's outstanding and make it a budget item for for the next year. Okay, 5064 tandem truck tender. Is that Renee? Steve, you want to speak to that?
So I was brought to my attention that we were a little bit worried about our new trucks that we already purchased because of the shortage in steel and the COVID stuff going on and the parts. And so Robbie was in contact with our supplier at the truck, and they assured us that the trucks we ordered are okay. But the next one we need to replace, if we don't get it ordered in the next month, we're already not going to see it till the fall of 2022 if it's ordered within the next month. So that's why we brought this forward to council to see if we can get approval to go ahead and just get the order in. And
Okay.
So
This also came up at the operations meeting at the county that, and many of the municipalities, as well as the county, spoke to the fact that they probably, some of them are not getting the trucks they ordered this year because they were too late ordering them. And they're also considering moving it up for the following year. Okay, I'll open it up to council for questions. Renee, or did you have a comment first?
I just wanted to provide a bit more. So as it's stated in the report that there's some frame separation on the truck. So at this point, we're looking to replace it. Initially, it was in the asset management plan for 2025. However, we were intending on bringing it forward to 2022 based on this. In this case where Steve's mentioning is that if we were not to order now and wait until we approve the budget as usual, say ordering in January or February, we'd run into an issue where we may not receive a truck next year. So we'd be down this truck. So at this point, we're just looking for approval to proceed with the tendering process. This would come back to council to award and fund it. The funding would actually come through in 2022.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Councillor McPherson? Councillor McPherson?
So obviously we're looking at something in outside of this current budget, and I'm not sure what other councils are doing, what other jurisdictions are doing, but always questionable when we start doing that. Having said that, I understand the need for it. What kind of allowance might we have, or what options would we have if for some strange reason we get into the into 2022 and the decision is made that there isn't funding available to replace the vehicle? I doubt that's going to happen, but we need to consider that. So what are the repercussions?
The intent currently is to this truck for 2022 was intended to be balanced within the budget for 2022. So other option can come forward when we award. However, I at this point I guess don't see a concern because I was going to balance based off this capital project. The only it wouldn't be up for a debate in 2022 should this proceed. That would be the only stipulation, as it would be already committed funds.
So what
And
I'm hearing,
obviously, I was just going to say, obviously, as you stated, though, it still has to come before council when tenders have been received to make a final decision to move ahead with the purchase.
that's correct. I would say that's correct, but at that point, if we make the commitment, there'd be no going back on it. And if the budget didn't allow for enough for all our capital, it'd have to be another item that would be pulled. Is that correct, Renee?
Yeah, that's the thing is that I guess if this proceeded when it comes back to council for approval, I will be providing funding sources for the project and how we would move forward with it in that report. However, that would be the bigger thing is that moving forward, the piece I can provide is an idea. We usually know ahead of time through the asset management plan what kind of projects are coming forward, so it gives a better picture on what could be coming forward in 2022.
Councillor Perrier.
Just a quick question. Will we get anything back monetarily from the 2013 vehicle, or is that just a trade-in? Or what do we do with that?
We put them up for tender once we're done with them. We just put them out in the tendering process to sell them. Like the other
Okay,
equipment.
thanks. Okay.
Just a comment on that is, I think the majority of our trucks we had in our asset management plan had them down as a 15-year cycle. And when we did the lag group, I know Arm Prior, and I believe there was somewhere else, they're finding that there's necessary to move to more of a 10-year cycle. And I think this will be the second truck that we had frame separation that showed up before we were ready to displace the vehicle that made it unsafe. So I guess we're going to have to consider maybe shortening that time frame, because we seem to be running into it, and it seems consistent with many other municipalities. So when we relook at our asset management plan, which is on the table now, that'll have to be a consideration, Renee, that we put in there.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Councillor Perrier.
Is there a means that we can go to other municipalities and do one large buy that would save us money?
Well, as a matter of fact, the county, that come up and is definitely part of the lag. One of the things is the specifications, you know, if you're driving on pavement or on gravel roads, the specifications are quite different, and it's been hard to get them together. But I know the public works managers have been discussing that. Is there a way to come up with a common spec, and or 2 or 3 specs so that we could get into that? So that is definitely a consideration that was brought forward through the lag group.
Okay, thank you.
So moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Frost. The council directs staff to proceed with tendering process for the replacement of the 2013 truck number 11. All in favor? And that's carried. Public Works, I don't think there's any, Councillor McPherson, sorry. Councillor McPherson?
Since we're at the end of this section here, Steve, could you provide an update on Madawaska Road? Looks like ditching is complete. What are the next steps? What's going on? What's going to happen there with that? There are sections of the road there that are getting in really rough shape. And so just wondering if you can sort of elaborate on what the thoughts are on how to deal with that. Obviously, we don't want to spend a whole lot of money on patching something that's being replaced, but by the same token, there are a couple locations where it's getting pretty bad.
We have a little bit of ditching yet to finish at the old store down to the end of the job.
Right.
But we went back to start getting some of the rock done because we got to get guardrail put in yet. So we got to get the fill from the rock put in areas where the guardrails need to go. For the bad parts of the road, I've been holding off as long as I can, because if I grade this up too early, it's going to go, and we get these rainstorms, it's going to get really potholes. And then the other issue is dust. And then we're going to be calciuming all the time. So I'm holding off as long as I can. And I know in the next few weeks, we're probably going to have to start grading it up, but I'm trying to hold off as long as I can. And
I noticed there are culverts in a couple of spots that have been set along the side of the road. The existing culverts, like, are they the only ones that are going to be replaced, or like are a lot of the culverts still in pretty good shape, or
yeah,
what's the thought there?
Yeah, there's a lot of them in very good shape. Even some of the ones we have to replace aren't that crazy bad shape. But the thing is, the frost is moving them, so they weren't put in properly underneath. So when you dig them out, you're going to damage them, and they have to be replaced then. So them ones you see are ones that are really heaving and need to be properly put in.
Yeah, and to that point, I guess you'll find out when you dig, but obviously there are at least a couple that are only about 6 inches below the surface of the road, and obviously that ideally they would be further down.
A lot of times it's the stuff that's underneath them. There's black and old wood and stuff like that we've been digging out. So like it's that kind of stuff you need to dig down a couple of feet, put some proper dirt in it.
All right. Okay, and obviously then the remaining portion of Madawaska Road, again, you drive Frontenac, so you don't drive on it as much, although I know the inspections are done, but especially with this rain that we've had the last little while, that road is, the remaining section is going to become more and more of a challenge because, again, it's getting patched, and so it'll wear and need to be fixed much more frequently. So unfortunately, that's going to be an ongoing challenge. I noticed yesterday that there's quite a bit that needs to be done.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, anything further? Councillor Perrier.
Just educate me. Shouldn't something like this for Councillor McPherson's ward, shouldn't this be raised at a roads meeting? We do have a roads committee, right?
Yes, we do, but Councillor McPherson is not part of the roads committee. And this is an opportunity for people viewing the council meeting to also get an update on the work that's being done. So that's why I believe Councillor McPherson did bring it up, is he's not a member of the roads meeting and there was no memo regarding the status of this project.
Okay, I'm just raising that, and perhaps that's something that should be raised at the roads meeting.
Yeah, for updates, right? I mean, it's a communication, right? We need updates, share.
So, sorry.
I'm sorry. I couldn't understand your question there, Charles.
Oh, no, I was just making comment on Lucy's inquiring that maybe if there's something from roads that could be updated, like whether it be a memo or an email, just for the councillors, whether it be in Ward 3 or Ward 1, that, oh, by the way, this issue is being dealt with next week, tomorrow, whatever. Yeah. Which I guess we kind of get with the weekly work plan, but it's not always, doesn't cover every little nuance to cover the questions like Councillor McPherson was after.
Well, but I think always at the council meeting, there'll be things coming up, just like you had a question, on the speed sign and so on. There'll be little things that we need to update on that hadn't been covered. So I don't think we'd wish to take that away. Councillor Perrier.
That was not my intent. My intent was to say that let's not forget what Councillor McPherson's concerns are, and therefore, is there a mechanism to add his concerns to the next roads committee meeting? That's all I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, certainly, and Steve, you have those, so you could, if you feel is necessary, then get Terry to add it on.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just comment though. I do have Steve's number, and I have spoken to him on different occasions. So, I don't feel like there's a lack of ability to communicate. Again, it was more, as our CAO had suggested. It was I just wanted to get a current update on a major construction project. That was the main thing I was looking for.
Good.
Okay, John, is there anything further as chairperson, or have we pretty well covered everything?
I think we've pretty well covered everything that I can think of.
Okay, thank you. Environmental management. So Charles, you sat in on that one last week. I don't think there's anything further on that. Environment, huh?
No, not at this juncture.
Thank you. So we'll move to protection services. There's a memo from OPP about decommissioning the Smith Falls Center. So there has been, you may have read in the paper, there is concern from some of the municipalities about this and losing it out of our Eastern Ontario catchment area. So I don't know if any council has any comments or concerns about this. It's more of a notification. If there are concerns, the only thing we could do is draft a letter and express the concerns if there are any. So I don't think I'm seeing any. So 7062 North Frontenac Automatic Aid Agreement. We'll turn that to our fire chief.
Thank you. So for the past quite a few years, we've had a annual agreement with North Frontenac, and now the chief and I have been speaking, and we wanted to get it to a 2-year agreement. So we're just asking for an extension, which will come up every 2 years. Their council has approved it, and he's just looking for us to approve it.
Okay, and I think the timing seems to be good because that takes us into, 6 months into or 7 months into the term of the new council. So instead of some of them having to deal with it right then. So I think the timing is right. So I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Frost. Whereas Clause 7D of the Automatic Aid Agreement states the agreement may be extended by mutual consent of the parties indicated by appropriate resolution and extension agreement being duly passed and executed by both parties hereto. Therefore, be it resolved, the Council approves the extension agreement for automatic aid between the Township of North Frontenac and the Township of Greater Madawaska expiring on June 13th, 2023. Questions of Council? All in favor? And that's carried. And Protection Services, Charles, anything on chairperson update?
No, not at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, thank you. 806 Planning Department. 8061 Building Permit Report. And now from Fire Chief to CBO.
Thank you. So the building is continuing to move along at a pretty steady clip. We are almost equal to what we were all of last year. So we are definitely moving forward. You will notice that in OPG, they do have quite a substantial project on the go. It was better not to put that in. It would skew our numbers because they are phase 1. They're at 60 million already.
Mm-hmm.
That's on the bottom end of that. I will continue to update as the phases progress. Approximately $110 million project.
Yeah. Well, thank you, and certainly thank you for your dedication to the CBO job. It looks like it's 82 building permits year to date compared to 30 at this time last year. So Darrell's department has been working at a feverish pace. One question on the OPG. Do they pay a building permit fee for that?
Correct, they do. Yeah, they do. It's a industrial fee of 50 cents a square foot, but we don't get any revenue.
We don't get any, what was that? I couldn't understand.
There's no other revenue generated except for the building.
Okay, so you get 50 cents a square foot. Okay, thank you. Questions of council? Councillor McPherson. Councillor McPherson.
Yeah, and I was just going to comment that it makes sense to leave OPG out of the numbers, not only to our CBO's comment that it would skew the numbers for future years, but also the fact that it doesn't fall into our taxation base. And so it really doesn't make sense to include those numbers when it doesn't fall into assessed value from a taxation perspective.
Yeah, that's very correct. And, and this emphasizes, our concern with the taxation and the fact that the payment in lieu hasn't been adjusted since it was incorporated, and is so wrong, but it's a fight that we've fought for many, many years and did presentations on with no success, similar to other areas. But anyway, $16 million is the equivalent of all of our last year building permits, so it would have been quite a tax increase for the township. Anyway, thank you for that report. 8062, agreement for improvement of road allowance.
Thank you.
Luke, you're going to speak to that one?
Yeah, sorry. Yes. Yeah, just it's a road allowance use agreement. We do these from time to time. I had somebody from the community approach me for the use of making a road on a township road allowance that's off of Taddy Hill Road.
And this is because they're unable to get to their property at present, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, questions of the council? Councillor McPherson.
I thought I read in the report that they do have access through another means, but it's not a very reasonable or good access. The road allowance would make it much easier for them to navigate.
Yes, yeah, the property abuts the KNP trail, but the KNP trail includes a steep grade change and rock cuts in that vicinity.
All right. So obviously it's an opportunity to for somebody who would like to develop to be able to do so without having concerns about access and not having to do a whole lot of work to try and deal with an obstacle such as a steep grade and rock cuts.
Mm-hmm. It's still a significant amount of work to get from this side. I'm not going to
Yeah, it's quite a length of ground to cover.
That's right.
Okay, so further questions? I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Frost. The council approves bylaw 25-2021 to authorize an agreement for 203-5271 Ontario Inc. to improve approximately 300 meters of unopened road allowance located between Concession 1, Lot 12 and Concession 1, Lot 13 in the geographic township of Blightfield. All in favor? And that's carried. (8063) zoning bylaw amendment. Luke?
Thank you. We had a public meeting earlier today about this rezoning. It's to change the zoning from a property from rural to limited service residential to reflect some private road access to a property. I'm recommending council proceeds with passing the zoning amendment bylaw.
So moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Frost. The council approves bylaw 28-2021 to rezone those lands located in Lot 3, Concession 11, Blightfield from rural zone to limited service residential zone. Questions of council? All in favor? Carried. 8064 zoning bylaw ZB 1062. Luke?
Thank you. Yeah, this is a rezoning for Mr. Earl Thompson. He has a pending severed lot that he would like to see finalized as a condition to the granting of the severance. And likewise, it indicates private road access to the property.
Okay, questions of council? Moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Frost. The council approves bylaw 30-2021 to rezone land located in Lot 14, Concession 9 from rural to rural exception 46 to allow a private service road to be used for access to the proposed severed lot. All in favor? And that's carried. And planning, any chairperson update? Councillor Perrier? No?
None.
Thank you. Finance and Finance and admin, we did 906.1, so 906.2 is debenture capital. Renee.
Yes, this is for requesting approval from council to proceed with the application process from Infrastructure Ontario for a loan or a debenture. We had discussed through both budget processes for 2020 and 2021 the requirement for borrowing. Most recently at the May finance update, I provided to you the debenture that was intended to be debentured in 2020 and the dollar value attached to that, and in clearing the outstanding on finance from prior years, as well as the capital for 2021. Currently, we would be seeking a construction loan as the projects for 2021 have not been expended as of yet. This way, we wouldn't be paying debt payments while we are not using the funds as of yet. So do we receive funds as we expend, and then the full agreement once debentured for the 2 million would come to council with the terms and interest.
Thank you. Questions of council? Seeing none, I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Frost. The council approved bylaw number 31-2021 as required to continue the application process through Infrastructure Ontario. All in favor? And that is carried. Capital. There's no chairperson's update. Economic development.
Mr.
Oh, I'm
Mayor.
sorry. Oh, Councillor,
Mr.
sorry,
Mayor.
Councillor McPherson.
So since this is the administration part of the meeting, I just want to bring a concern of mine to light. You're well aware of it, so this isn't a surprise. I've discussed it, but I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of my concerns around scheduling of meetings. In particular, special council meetings, and we've had quite a number of those over the last year, and they inevitably are scheduled during regular working hours. They're, to my knowledge, the only meeting that I've attended that's been not during working hours was the meeting last week. So it is a concern for me. I did make an allowance, if everybody will recall, our meetings, our regular council meetings always started at 5:30 in order to allow for myself and anybody else who might ever get elected to council who works a full-time job. Because of the convenience of being able to attend meetings electronically and no need for travel, I did agree and concede to having our regular council meetings held at 3 p.m. on Mondays. But all of these special council meetings to date have all been scheduled during regular working hours. I just need everybody to be aware, I will not be attending those meetings going forward. There may be exceptional basis for it, but I won't be attending those meetings. I did not attend the public meetings that were scheduled before council this afternoon. I regret that, but it's just, I cannot be attending meetings during regular working hours other than for exceptional reasons. And many of our special council meetings, although they're scheduled for special reasons, there's no special reason why it needs to be scheduled during the day. And so going forward, I would ask that our staff, and again, I've spoken to the CAO about this and she fully understands, and I've asked that meetings going forward, that if at all possible, that they be scheduled either late in the day or in the early evening, so that I may attend those meetings.
Okay, thank you for that. And certainly when people are elected to council, the meetings do have to be set so that any of the elected can attend. So we appreciate you doing the regular council meeting, because that gives an opportunity for staff to attend it through their regular working day rather than on an overtime basis. But we certainly can play with that if that becomes a problem. And I'll look to the CAO to look at scheduling special council meetings so all of council can attend.
So as Councillor McPherson suggested, that we did have a conversation, and we will be working to accommodate any special meetings or public meetings going forward, such that they're later in the day or into the evening, recognizing that he does have a full-time job. So we are working to work with Councillor McPherson and all members of council. So if there, and that's why we have staff contact all members of council prior to setting a council meeting to see if it is if ever it works for everyone. So if it doesn't work, please do speak up, and we will try our best to find a time for special council meetings that works for everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, economic development. There's really nothing new. The letters have gone out, regarding the Eorn gig project. I initially understood from Jim Pine and the Eorn group and that there was going to be a further letter that we could individually send, but it still has not been drafted. I reached out to the warden of the county, who is the chair of the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, and she was in contact with Jim about it, but and even offered to do the letter. But anyway, they're working with it. But there's also a letter was posted on the website and on Facebook, and I did send it out to you, where the minister did respond to myself, and they seem to be looking favorably at the gig project. So that'd be a blessing for us, is if they did agree to go along with the Eorn proposal. So it is being worked at. I don't have anything further on the individual letters, and don't know if I will.
Yeah.
So that's it for economic development. Community health, Calabogie Animal Rescue information item.
Sorry, Alison, can I interject here?
Absolutely.
Okay, initially I'd asked the CAO to put this on the agenda because the CARE wanted to put their drop box over where the post office and the medical center is. And then I thought, well, we can't just do that. We should ask council, but that decision has since been kiboshed, so there's no discussion required.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
And there's nothing, Charles, as far as the chairperson's update there?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Community Parks and Recreation, 12061 Recreation Agreement with the Town of Renfrew. Renee, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, so this is the recreational agreement for services that we have the town of Renfrew. A lot of the neighboring municipalities to Renfrew have this type of agreement. As you'll see, there is a slight overlap of the old agreement from 2017. They're attempting to, you could see it used to be a expiry of March 31st. They're attempting to bring it to an annual review to 2023. Therefore, there's the addition of 2022 and 23 to the agreement, and then from the old agreement, the year 2020 was included pre-COVID. Therefore, that value of the invoice of 10,500 was reduced to 5,600, which we budgeted for in this manner. Therefore, this is just simply the extension, and mostly of an extension of the agreement to December 31st, 2023.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of council on that? Moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Frost. The council approves bylaw 29, 2021, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and CAO to execute an agreement with the town of Renfrew respecting the provision of recreation services for the period January 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2023. All in favor? That's carried. Okay. Do we do the minutes now?
Yes.
Moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Frost. Be it resolved that the following minutes are approved by Council. May 17, 2021, regular council meeting. All in favor? Carried. And other closed session. Moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Frost. The council meeting of June 21st, 2021 at 4:13 p.m. Enter into closed session pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act regarding litigation or potential litigation, causeway easement, labor relations and employee and negotiations, pay equity, information explicitly supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board, library proposal, personal matters about an identifiable individual, structure, and CAO performance appraisal. All in favor? And that's carried. So, Sean.